если совсем честно, то я не очень готовился, потому что до конца не понял формат следующего мероприятия. Но сейчас как-нибудь по обстановке тогда
Ну, вид экономики жалко нету.
А, ты выключен, да?
А, ну.
Нет, по-моему, наоборот. Доброе утро, уважаемые участники круглого стола под названием «Инвестиции в Арктике». Очень приятно всех поприветствовать. Позволю себе представиться. Криворотов Андрей Константинович, доцент кафедры управления инновациями Одинцовского филиала Московского государственного института международных отношений, по совместительству доцент кафедры международных исследований Северо-Восточного федерального университета, по совместительству сотрудник «Газпрома» и прочее, кандидат экономических наук, защищавшийся по экономике норвежского Заполярья. Мне очень приятно, что Дарьяна Дмитриевна, уважаемая, в очередной раз пригласила меня на это мероприятие. Видимо, стоит сказать пару слов о круглом столе. Если угодно, это такая постоянная величина уже Северного форума по устойчивому развитию. У нас 4-й раз проходит форум, и 4-й раз здесь присутствуют специалисты по инвестициям, и проводится такое отдельное мероприятие. Начиналось оно в сотрудничестве с Российским советом по международным делам, экспертом которого я также являюсь. Начиналось под лозунгом «Безопасность инвестиций в Арктике». Со временем, как показала практика, мы поняли, что, видимо, надо немножко расширять формат обсуждения и, собственно, от проблем безопасности экономической, политической и прочей перейти к более широкому кругу, прежде всего подразумевая безопасность региональную, безопасность человека и благосостояние людей. В этом смысле у нас тематика расширилась. Уважаемые господа, вновь прибывшие, пожалуйста, подсаживайтесь к столу, не стесняйтесь. Нет, наоборот, очень приятно. Подходите поближе. Ой, нет, туда все нормально. Тут жизнь вносит какие-то коррективы свои. Мне очень понравилось, извините, для меня Норвегия родная страна, вторая фактически. То есть родина у меня Россия, но с Норвегией связана моя профессиональная деятельность как дипломата и как ученого. Мне один норвежский капитан дальнего плавания, много ходивший по арктическим морям, сказал: единственное, в чем ты можешь быть уверен, когда ты заходишь в Арктику, это в том, что ты не можешь быть уверен ни в чем. Ну и, собственно, я имел возможность в этом убедиться, хоть Якутск не относится формально к арктической зоне, но это в полной степени крайний север, когда наш самолет из Москвы оказался задержан на 8,5 часов из-за тумана, и мы все равно в результате сели в тумане. В общем, жизнь свои коррективы вносит, и я в этом плане на севере к этому отношусь с пониманием, и всех к этому тоже призываю. У нас тоже, соответственно, некоторые внеслись коррективы в состав наших выступающих. Халдар Йоханссон, наш добрый друг из Исландии, он здесь сейчас на месте, равно как и Юлия Валерьевна Заика, но они передали, у них возникли накладки, поэтому они не смогли прийти. Может быть, подойдут попозже, тогда мы охотно предоставим слово. А пока позвольте мне представить наш уважаемый президиум. Начну с дам. Дарьяна Дмитриевна Максимова, заведующая кафедрой международных исследований СВФУ, кандидат политических наук, специалист по арктической Канаде. Она же заместитель исполнительного директора Северного форума, который является одним из соорганизаторов Северного форума по устойчивому развитию. Варвара Александровна Холмогорова, сотрудник нашей кафедры. Варвара, вы защитились или нет? Собирается как раз защищаться по инвестициям в Арктике, поэтому сам Бог велел ей здесь тоже присутствовать. И Никита Александрович Числов представляет Камчатку. Он является помощником исполнительного директора Северного форума. Это одна из его многочисленных должностей. А так, в общем, человек, опять же, с хорошим знанием Севера и тех проблем, которые на нем есть. Мне очень приятно, что здесь представлены у нас в президиуме сразу 3 субъекта нашей федерации. Это, надеюсь, позволит сделать достаточно широкое и комплексное обсуждения. И, как я вижу, у нас большинство наших слушателей – это студенты, но есть несколько взрослых людей. Обращаюсь ко всем, пожалуйста, не стесняйтесь задавать вопросы, не стесняйтесь брать слово. Особенно, вот, уважаемые господа и дамы, я вижу, вы люди явно опытные, вам наверняка есть что сказать. Пожалуйста, не стесняйтесь. Формат этого мероприятия именно круглый стол, который предусматривает, как вы, наверное, знаете, он пошел это еще от короля Артура, который специально поставил стол не прямой, а круглый, чтобы никто из рыцарей не чувствовал себя старше или младше остальных. В этом плане наш президиум тоже достаточно условен. Просто кто-то должен сидеть на микрофоне и руководить дискуссией. А так, пожалуйста, охотно призываем всех. Тем более, что тема эта бесконечно широкая и невероятно актуальная. Причем в этом году она явно по-другому ставится, чем даже год назад, когда мы проводили очередное мероприятие на СФУР-3. Если коротко, я даже не думаю, что надо много вдаваться в детали, потому что мы все знаем, какие колоссальные подвижки произошли в этом году, но я просто намечу несколько основных черт. Кардинально изменилась международная обстановка, что мне, конечно, как международнику близко, поэтому, ну и, собственно, с нее надо начать. Мы столкнулись с такими явлениями, как мощные потрясения на мировых рынках, как масштабные, ни с чем вообще не имеющие себе равных международные санкции против России, которые, помимо прочего, привели к уходу из России большого числа западных инвесторов, в том числе работавших в нашей арктической зоне. Причем это не только такие известные компании, как, допустим, British Petroleum, BP, которая была акционером Роснефти и так далее, но, допустим, компания Maersk датская, ее уход, так сказать, у нас с рядовым населением не был замечен, но это компания, ведущая в мире по контейнерным перевозкам. Очень многие надежды, которые связывались, допустим, с международным транзитом по Севморпути и даже с внутренними перевозками, они на самом деле просели из-за этого факта. Мы столкнулись с невероятным давлением, с одной стороны. С другой стороны, Россия показывает, что она с этим давлением, так сказать, не то что не смирится, а да, понимаем, так сказать, обстановка изменилась, но планы наши остаются прежними. В апреле этого года было совещание у президента, посвященное арктическим проблемам. На следующий день после этого было совещание, посвященное нефтегазовым проектам, которые очень важны, опять же, в Арктике. В обоих случаях было очень четко заявлено, что, несмотря на все изменение обстановки, мы ни один из наших масштабных проектов не сдвигаем вправо. Они все должны быть реализованы эффективно, с учетом тех объективных изменений, которые произошли. Это один пласт вопросов. Второй пласт, существующий где-то параллельно этому процессу, это то, что в России изменилось серьезно к лучшему условия инвестирования в арктической зоне.
Last year, but this year it is kind of giving results, and the Russian Federation had actually passed some of the legislations dealing with the Arctic, and actually it is working very well, and we have gigantic projects that have lots of millions of dollars investments, and we had, thank God, we actually, due to new legislations, we have very new approach, and we do support the residents of the Arctic regions, and if you want to be an entrepreneur in the Arctic regions, you can actually have just 1 million rubles, and you can be a resident of the Arctic region's investment things. So we announced that we support every entrepreneur in the Arctic.
была
So
уже появилась возможность подвести первые итоги.
So now we have come to some results. Of course, we can't say that it's happening really fast, but we do have a lot of investments. Of course, we have big ones and small ones, and the conditions are quite preferable for everybody to join. And but I believe that the process has started and it will go forth. And this gives opportunities to speak about, sanctions are sanctions, but if we have inner desire, desire within our country to work in the Arctic, it is really good. So the third thing is about the international relations, and when we have investments that left our arena, it was compensated, is actually compensated by the investors from the Asian countries, and at least we have our first talks, and Yakutsk in this case is the central, it has central position, and so we look into the Arctic together with the eastern countries, and of course it works together with the. Well, this is main things and issues that we need to work on. And once again, so discussions are quite free, and not all the speakers are here. So please, once again, I'm telling you, don't be shy and take part.
Владимир Германович Милославский.
Vladimir Germanovich Mislavsky, deputy head of the administrative of the Bulunsky district, is online.
Ну, соответственно, как подключится, мы дадим ему слово.
So he will speak. So I would like you to meet Daryana Maximova.
Тех проблем, с которыми сейчас сталкиваются инвестиции в Арктике. Еще раз прошу. Не стесняйтесь, если вы даже студенты-первокурсники, если у вас есть что сказать или если...
Once again, if you're students of the first year, I still invite you to the conversation. Thank you very much. The word democracy in investment area is quite important. When we talk about investments, when there is a certain amount of money which lead to a certain project, and projects in the Arctic are quite grand, either science or practice, all of this includes big spendings. For example, it is not a deal of short-term activities. We do it for those activities in which investments are very prominent. Investments are connected with those people who are very invested, very dedicated to the concrete projects. I'm also the secretary of the director of the Northern Forum. I'm being asked why I'm working so hard, but right now, including the events happening in my life, all of it leads to this roundtable, investments in the Arctic. I would appreciate if this fourth Northern Forum would start with embark big projects onward. This platform was planned not just for discussions, but to launch the projects. Launch a project, what does it mean? Those mean investments. Scientific, practical activity is very important, and sometimes someone in the business thinks about a certain idea. It is good, but science sometimes is made just for creating the articles and being thrown in the archives. I came from a scientific area, dealt with it for 15 years. Um, Institute of Sciences in Canada, and yes, it is true that I'm doing researches about Canadian Arctic, but nevertheless, I hope it will come to the former state of deals. And the main idea of this event, investments in the Arctic, me and Andrei Konstantinovich collect different formats. We have invited different specialists from the agencies of investment development. We invited, of course, scientists, different companies. We have tried to liven them up, but it is unfortunate that it was not successful. So the goal of our project is to firstly make a partnership with different ministries. But right now we have a concrete direction and a project. A day ago, after yesterday, we have made a solution of making a certain project in the Arctic that would be connected with the creation of a new consortium of Arctic developments. In there, we have different partners from different regions of Russia, Arctic zones of Russia, and not only from them. We also have Chinese partner, and then we'll try to invite Indian partners, and we hope that investments in this project are going to be relevant and quite grand. Investments in the Arctic is quite a basic name. We'll try to verify it in one way or another. Our main goal is to create a review of the investments in the Arctic region. What investments have already been made? What was their main reason and goal? Varvara Holmogorova is also sitting right next to us, who writes an article about investments in the Arctic. We are eager to understand the whole reason of investments going on in the Arctic. Support of the state is quite crucial, but we still think that the ideas should come up from the below, and we're interested about the realization of those ideas. In the Arctic, there are 8 countries, well, at least in the Arctic Union. I wouldn't say that all of these countries are Arctic neighbors. If we talk about this furthermore, it's going to be a lecture. After events of the February, Arctic Union has stopped any activities in Russia. Those countries are USA, Canada, Finland, Iceland, Denmark, Sweden, and yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, Russia is still a factual member of the Union. An Arctic Union is a very interesting mechanism of solving the issues of the Arctic, but it is not working as it should. So please imagine the globe. and imagine Russia, the biggest country in the world, and realize that it's the biggest territory of the Arctic. How can you discuss the problems of the Arctic without discussing Russia?
Мы действительно не знаем, не только у нас в России, но и вообще в Арктике. Как вообще это все будет происходить?
We do not realize how the ongoing discussions are going to be made without including Russia.
Международное сотрудничество из-за противостояния двух стран и двуполярного мира.
It was quite difficult to realize certain ideas because of the Cold War confrontation.
И вот в 1987 году Михаил Горбачев
In 1987, Gorbachev has initiated this relationship between countries of the Arctic, and this time, those countries who wish to become the partners of USSR have stopped any relationships with Russia. Although Russia is still a very prominent player in the Arctic, we do not stop. We will not wait for them to face us once again.
Что происходит действительно с изменением климата? Есть огромный интерес у азиатских стран.
There is still a very big interest among Asian countries.
Не под имеется в прямом смысле, а именно на карте ниже находится как раз-таки
Below us, below Russia, there are Asian countries, and when we talk about climate changes in the world,
ну, как сказал Билл
and as Bill Gates told us, if we can trust him, the next catastrophe of the humanity after the COVID,
изменение климата.
those are climate changes. Drastic climate changes lead to the biggest catastrophe in the world, and it might be the Great Flood. But when we talk about,
Ну да, когда мы
is it a
говорим
flood? Yeah, when we talk about the
конечно, может быть, на наш век хватит. Вот. Но,
about the humanity's fate,
из-за изменения климата,
the
что мы будем
heat,
делать?
the overheat of the continents and icebergs might lead to big changes, and it comes to us to make changes, make certain developments to prevent this catastrophe.
Открытся новые транзитные пути, открываются возможности для
Certain
эксплуатации ресурсов.
transport corridors are getting created, certain openings are created during these changes.
Что мы развиваем Арктику,
We are developing the Arctic, but
и
how
здесь как раз это
we are developing it?
развитие.
And this is exactly the problem, the issue of stable development.
Экономика,
It includes economics, social development, and the last, the most dangerous one, those are ecological problems. It not only includes climate changes, but also other problems. What do we want to understand for stable development? We might not care about what happens in the Arctic, but after some time, our sons, our grandchildren might understand that what comes from the Arctic will definitely cause the consequences in the long term.
Даже такие технологии у канадцев, например,
And the Canadians have the certain technology about investments and the changes of the climate. They are trying to maintain the technology.
проходило, что
If I remember, there was a discussion about it in the last discussion. They're going to cover the ice with a certain cover to prevent the everlasting melting of the ice. Of course, when we talk about climate changes,
загрязнение окружающей среды,
we should also include the different processes, which include waste of carbon and other very negative processes. What are we going to do? Perhaps maybe I might surprise you. The Arctic is the most polluted region in the world. Although a human never really settled in there, the waters of the Arctic are the most polluted ever in the globe.
Так что об этом нужно всегда думать, когда мы
This is what we need to know during the ongoing conversations about the Arctic. It is the most vulnerable place in the world and the most important for the overall climate of the planet. I might not seem as a person who will support only the importance of the investments and not the positive changes for the Arctic. Of course, no. Investments are not the only thing that we should talk about. But I'd say that tourism should not be made for mass public. Quite literally, 1 month ago, I've been in Murmansk. I've been asked to wear proper clothes for Arctic expedition. It's going to be quite cold in there, and we need proper equipment. Although it was only -1 degree Celsius. I went for a shopping trip in Moscow to purchase myself required clothes. And the first question the consultant asked me, why are you trying to purchase these clothes? Well, I've answered I'm going to Arctic, and they said, wow, I'm also going there. And indeed, people they desire to go there. And the tourism is definitely not a cheap activity. It includes a range of questions, which includes social development, economics development issues. Perhaps Mr. Krivorotov will fully develop this theme. He's a practitioner with a big experience.
Да, советник председателя правления Stockman Development. Нет? Газпром? Давайте вы сами.
Okay, please do it yourself.
Ну, раз уж об этом зашла речь, я 12,5 лет был секретарем совета директоров компании.
There is a company in Stockman Development, and I used to be a deputy. And we worked on the Stockman's gas resources in the Arctic shelf in the Barents Sea. So I actually worked there for 12 years. Last year, the project was closed because of the bad economic situation. So I know what does it mean to have this kind of bad investment conditions. So, and I also worked. I definitely know a lot about Arctic from the investment point of view, and I will share and also I am a member of the Association of the Scientific, an expert on of the panel of the Arctic. And of course, we are starting this project together with Andrei Konstantinovich, because he combines in his work not only science but also practical knowledge, and we hope that that we have someone from Bolunsky. Yes, we do. We do the connection. We do have the connection, and
Большое спасибо, Дарьяна Юрьевна.
thank
Владимир
you,
Германович,
Dariana.
здравствуйте. Как слышите, как
Vladimir
видите нас?
Germanovich, how are you? Do you see us well?
Здравствуйте, видим, слышим вас хорошо, как нас слышно?
Очень хорошо слышно.
So
Владимир
everything
Владимирович,
is
спасибо
fine.
большое, что
Thank you
смогли
for
нам прорваться, что называется. Если не
joining
возражаете,
us,
тогда прямо сейчас сразу
and
и
I'm
предоставил бы
giving
вам
you the
слово.
floor
Что
right
называется,
now,
человеку
and
с
he's
места.
the
Потому что,
man who works in the field.
как ни говори, все эти
So
дискуссии про
all the
Арктику, которые
discussions about
проходят
the
в столице,
Arctic, you know, when
столице
we
нашей
do it
Родины, где я живу, в столице
in the capital of our country or in the capital of the republic,
тем не менее,
you know,
столичные дискуссии есть
nonetheless,
столичные дискуссии. А
you
есть
know,
люди,
the
которые живут
discussions
в
are the
Арктике, у которых
discussions,
Арктика начинается прямо за
but
порогом,
people
которым
are
о таковых
there.
логистических
Those
и
people who
понятных
are
нет
in the
и близко.
Arctic,
Поэтому с большим
they
удовольствием хочу
know
предоставить
of the
слово
Arctic,
Владимиру Германовичу
like,
Милославскому, заместителю главы администрации
and I'm giving the
Болонского улуса
floor Miloslavsky
Республики
Vladimir
Саха.
Germanovich, the
Пожалуйста,
PhD head of the
говорите.
administrative of the
У нас
Bolunsky
свободная
region.
дискуссия и
So we
в
have a
плане
very
времени, в общем, не
free
хочу вас сильно
discussion,
ограничивать, в
and
плане тематики тем более.
please.
Пожалуйста, вам слово.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые коллеги.
Hello, dear
Надеюсь,
colleagues.
качество
I hope
связи
that
нам
the
позволит
connection is quite
максимально
well.
информации предоставить по отношению к сегодняшней теме. Да,
And
действительно, мы
yes,
буквально 200
indeed,
метров из окна, если посмотреть,
200 from
находимся
my
на
window,
берегу моря
I can
Арктики,
see the
что
shores of the
не
Laptev
непосредственно
Sea.
на месте в Арктике.
So we are in the Arctic
Тема
ourselves.
инвестиций —
So the
это
theme
огромный и многогранный
investments
вопрос в Арктике, и
is,
он
of
всегда
course,
очень
is
многогранный,
always
исходя из самой специфики. Это
has lots of
особенности
layers, and because
логистики,
it's about
интернета
logistics,
и
about internet, about
способов доставки. И если мы
transportation,
рассматриваем
means of
инвестиции в Арктике как
transportation.
таковые,
And then when we
прежде
speak
всего,
about the investments in the
если
Arctic,
говорить о маршруте,
we,
да, восточную часть
if
Арктики,
we speak about the eastern part of the Arctic,
он должен досконально быть прописан, потому
we need to work on it very thoroughly, because the project cost is quite high and much higher than probably projects in this of the cities, and you know, it's bigger than 3 to 5 times, and it is, and of course it is because of the logistics and because of the how it can be served. So if we speak about the investments, let's see the questions that we can touch upon. Like, for example, I was born in the central part of Russia, and of course here we need to look into the investment from the ecological point of view and from digitization of the projects, and of course we need to look into future with hopes. And we have this project called Arctica, and we have worked on it for 2 years already, and we are implementing it here, and we have volunteers from different parts of Russia, up to 200 people, and we have cleaned 200. We actually removed 250 cubic meters of plastic and timber, and we shipped them to the
Реализация данного федерального проекта —
and
это один
also,
из
if we speak about the
примеров,
federal
как
projects,
можно работать в Арктике с точки зрения
we can work
экологии и
from the
расчистки того
point of view
наследия,
of
которое
ecology,
десятилетиями в
and
Арктике
накапливалось
за советский
the
период.
waste that
Потому что
have been accumulated
наша
here for
ответственность на
many,
данный
many
момент
decades during the Soviet
все-таки сделать
times,
чистой,
and
потому что
our
без
aim
экологического подхода мы
is
просто не
to make
можем
the
дальше
Arctic
качественно
clean,
развивать. Нам
and
необходимо расчищать
we need, in
землю
order
для
to develop
развития
further,
туризма,
we
чтобы не
have
было
to
этого
clean
лесного
the
чтобы
grounds so
туристы,
that we
которые
have,
приезжают в Арктику, в том
like for
числе
example,
иностранные,
if we have
их
tourists to come
птица
here,
перегоняла до 400 человек
like for
в
example, we have
заповедное время в
tourists,
год.
we would
Это
receive like
Япония
about
и
400
скандинавские
people a
страны,
year,
Япония, Китай и так далее. И, конечно, мы
and
являемся
of
таким
course,
в Арктике, который хочется, конечно, чтобы выглядел
so
красиво и
of course we
благоустроенно.
want
И
to
в рамках
look
федерального проекта
beautiful
очень рад,
and
что мы эту
comfortable,
задачу выполняем.
and we are
Будет
working on this
продолжаться до
task, and
2026
it
года.
will work
Так как
until
мы сейчас
2026.
для того, чтобы качественно развивать инвестиции, нам
And we
необходимо
need to actually
пойти потому что без интернета невозможно представить, в принципе,
вообще не
жизнь
слышно.
человека сейчас. И если для крупных городов, для центральной России, конечно, в мире интернет — это обыденность. То, что он есть на телефоне, он есть на
So,
компьютере,
and this is about the internet connection. And in the Arctic, if we speak about the internet connection, is very bad, and we have the requirements of developing internet connection so that our population would have the access to internet, so that they can get to education, to medicine, to many more things that can be provided via internet. And we spoke to the Minister of Innovation with the Ministry of the Innovation yesterday, and we spoke about the center that will be built in Belunsky region in Tiksi.
за пределы нашего района. То есть приложения, которые разрабатываются в Тиксе.
Владимир Германович, простите,
So sorry.
очень плохо слышно последнее.
Unfortunately, the connection is too bad.
Интернет в Арктике не всегда хорошо работает.
Unfortunately, the internet connection is not good in the Arctic. So could you please repeat what did you say about the center that was open? Oh, we have opened the IT center in Belunsky region. So, and from last year, it actually played a great role. We started exporting IT services. We have this. We provide apps to the regions that have internet connection. And congratulations on this center opening. You are great workers.
Если качество связи хорошее, мы могли бы добавить, что
we would also add that we need to
работаем в области, кроме IT, с интеллектуальной экономикой.
So we work on the intellectual economics, and we register systems of certification. And these are the projects that can become anchor so that they actually be invested, and we can test here applications, we can test here clothing and other things. And our task is to get all the investment about the certification to channel to the development of the settlement of Tixi. So it is a it is actually the project that is really good for Tixi due to climatic conditions and other things.
Прошу прощения, опять не слышно вас. Алло.
Unfortunately, we can't hear you again.
Германович, слышите меня?
Do you hear me well?
Да, слышим, видим очень хорошо.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the connection isn't really good, and so sorry. Could you please repeat again?
Ищите потенциальные якорные инвестпроекты. Дальше стало очень плохо слышно. Извините.
Да, и одним из таких проектов является
So one of the projects is the system of certification project that is called Done in the Arctic or Made in the Arctic, and we can test, different things that is produced somewhere in the world or in Russia. So we can become a testing polygon of, and we can test here different equipments, clothing, and stuff like that. And this, the investment to this project can actually be channeled to the development of the the settlement of Tixi, and it is some kind of a.
Да, спасибо.
Thank you.
Не идеально, но самое главное, что понятен смысл. Спасибо.
So we got the idea. Thank you.
Хорошо, но в связи с качеством связи мы тогда не будем вклиниваться в дискуссию.
Probably we will just we'll send you our information in written form since the connection is too poor, and you will read what we wanted to say. Thank you. Thank you very much for all you provided about the certification, and probably we'll have.
Скажите, пожалуйста, присутствующие, есть ли у кого-то вопросы?
Do we have any questions? We would like to speak about the. We would like to speak more, of course, but unfortunately the connection is too bad. So thank you very much, Vladimir Germanovich, and we will wait for your written information. And if you have time, you can actually. Oh, Dariana has a question. I have an idea. So maybe we can actually have a round table in Tixi and have the round table there. Unfortunately, of course, we can actually bring participants to have the round table in Tixi without any need in connecting via internet. Yes, we support it fully, and it would be very interesting, and we can actually show you everything that we have here, all the problems that we face, and what we can, and what can be actually, what can we give to other regions of Russia as well, because we are ready to work with potential investors, and we can synchronize to limit the risks, and it would be really nice to have different projects united. And so we are speaking here about clusterization, and due to clusterization, it would be really great, and we would minimize the risks. So we do have a plan to go to Tixi. Actually, we discussed it in Murmansk, and in Murmansk, we wanted to have this idea to go to Tixi. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое за оперативность и подключение.
Thank you for connecting.
Спасибо огромное.
Спасибо вам.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо огромное еще раз, Владимир Германович. Спасибо, Дарья Дмитриевна, за такую
Thank you, Daryana Dmitrievna, and it's a wonderful idea. You know, I haven't been to Tixi, and I know that it's a very interesting settlement. It has, it usually had really big problems in the 90s, and it is actually very. It had this wind park there, and you know, wind park in Tixi, and it is one of the beautiful examples of the renewable energy, and it is the example of the international collaboration that we work together with Japanese counterparts, and it's a part of the sea route there, because it's a port city, and it is not only. So they do have really interesting niches, and thank you very much for connecting, and we hope that we will continue our discussions, and of course we will join, and I would love to go there. And you know, my grandfather used to work in the delta of Lena and in one of the islands, and it would be like, and it would be, I would feel myself really lucky to go there. Please be.
Спасибо. Да, и, пожалуйста, не отключайтесь, если будет возможность и желание. Так, если
If anyone has any questions or to say something, if not, then in the program we have a little speech of mine about the international aspect of this problem. But for now, I just want to know if anyone has any sort of question. May I add something? Yes, of course.
Спасибо, Андрей Константинович. Хотела бы обратить к
Floor is given to you. I'd like to talk with the students of who participate in this conversation. You have a unique chance to boost your qualification up, because the activity have moved to Vladivostok. And if we talk about the Arctic and Far East, there was a joke that the whole ministry should be moved up from Moscow to Vladivostok, because our direction must be moved from west to east. Our Asian countries are very interested in relationships between ourselves, and thus specialists are required for this, young professionals who will provide the relationship steadiness and friendliness. It is a crucial moment. It might appear as absolute end for any abroad investments for the Arctic, but it is not. So students, I repeat, it is a huge opportunity for you. If I remember that correctly, our partners have went for a trip around 12 cities of Russia to see the projects that must be coordinated and find a win-win situation for every side. When we talk about China, there was a high Blagoveschensk Road. It is indeed quite a significant project for both Russia and China. And when limitations are going to be lifted, I hope that this road is going to be active. Yesterday, we met with the Minister of Development of the Arctic, who came from Moscow. We have discussed the investments of the Arctic, what kind of investments are required for this matter, what can Chinese and Indians make for the development of the infrastructure, and of course, the first thing that must be done is creation of the ports. If I remember that correctly, 36 million of tons of products were transported along the northern transport corridor. I hope that a modern, well-equipped port would appear in Tixi, and it would create a big prospect for Bulunsky district in general. It is possible and realizable. In this consortium, we will realize and develop the ideas and solutions for creating such projects.
Как думаете, как мы можем привлечь китайских партнеров в этой сложной
I would ask Andrei Konstantinovich a question: how we should propose these ideas to our partners, and how would you personally see the overall path of development of this project? Thank you for such an emotional speech, Varvara Alexandrovna. I couldn't possibly not to support you on this matter as a specialist of Asian countries. Of course, there is a colossal window of opportunities for universities. You do not need to go to Asia because you currently live in it. And an immense advantage of Russians is that they live in both parts of the continents, both Europe and Asia. Dear adults who reside on this round table, if you have anything to add, please do so. Please turn on your microphone. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, participants. We represent a very large Russian facility of which resides at the border of Belarus and Russia. And as representatives of Far East, we would like to talk about the investments. We try to understand, comprehend the importance of the equipment and infrastructure which your already fourth Northern Forum tries to propose. What will be asked from different partners in terms of equipment, and secondly, the overall relevancy of such decisions. It is quite complicated. Firstly, the money, the relevancy, and perhaps we should just invest in the logistics and do the things as they were in the past. Um, the the competition between different partners is immense. We will try to realize everything that you ask from us in terms of development of the Arctic and including these factors that were said, we try to realize those projects connected with the Band 1 and Band 3. Then there is Sakhalin, Vostok Oil, etc., the development in Yakutia. All of these matters are quite familiar to us, and perhaps all of the equipments which are already widely used in other areas. We have such goal. We need to thoroughly think about this. Perhaps any state solutions who work in the regions of the Far East and the Arctic about accreditation. For example, credits for the youth. I had a conversation with the taxi driver, and he told me that indeed youth are quite prominent, quite often used such credits for themselves. And it is just a single example. The same case with the facilities and enterprises. Our facility is strongly connected with the Russian capital, Russian budget. We know what it is. We live and work and solve these issues which are connected with the energetics. For example, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Спасибо огромное.
And one second, I haven't said that.
Большое спасибо, Олег Петрович. Вы действительно обозначили некоторые реальные.
Thank you, Alexey Petrovich. Yes, you've indeed presented ourselves quite important issues as a potential investor of the Arctic zone. And perhaps I'll make a little introduction to our students.
Любой инвестор перед тем, как принимать очень ответственное решение.
An investor must make a thorough thought process to make a final decision on investing in something. Thank you very much. Are there any willing to ask? Okay, I represent Tomsk region, Western Siberia. I work in the departments of such relations. I'm not a specialist in investments. What's your name? Shulgova Olga Sergeyevna. While listening to your speech, I wanted to understand how the region must maybe participate in such projects. How I see it, it is that regions which are connecting themselves as neighbors may participate in infrastructure projects. And everything which is connected with the Arctic zone, yes, you said it quite correctly that it's quite expensive and the state must participate in this issue. And transport availability, transport payments must be present in this area. Personally, I do not know how to get to Dixie myself. You can get there only by plane, and perhaps to go there through Moscow.
фактически пролетев страну в одну сторону и потом вернуться обратно из Москвы.
It is quite a problem to get from one part of the country to another and then back home. Yes, my dear colleagues, I had similar ideas. I cannot I cannot confidently talk about business, but I'd say my ideas how Tomsk region would propose its ideas about different oil and gas facilities. But of course, those all are federal constructs. But in Tomsk, there are quite lots of little startups which develop themselves into international companies which have innovative technological developments and researches. For example, oil gas services, Power of Siberia, the construction of the oil power line. They are very interested in participation in large projects. If there is a market for this, our companies would, for example, company Mikran, production of double usage. They currently create a facility in Indonesia. There is a marketplace in there. So I'd like to hear interesting ideas in here. Perhaps something can be done with the regions and their relationships. Think about some projects about this. We have initiatives to I think you have a certain project in mind about nuclear energetics. Tomsky Regional University creates employees for such a profession. They plan to be implemented in quite a variety of countries, Belarus included. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And, do you have any reaction on this? Yes, the reaction is the same about the Northern Forum.
Такой воздух, да, видимо, у Сергеевны был, но с которым она приехала сюда. И знаете, что вы...
So she's got came to observe what the Northern Forum works, and so all the development of that the Northern Forum actually the Northern Forum's task is to find investments to the Arctic and to the northern regions. And in 1991, the Northern Forum actually decided not to have a limited number of countries, and they actually those who signed the opening papers of the Northern Forum were not only Arctic countries, but also Mongolia and other countries. And I can say that the Northern Forum actually was able to get their attention and get their participant just because of the investment ideas. And we have a lot of projects that are left all alone, and some of the projects they just started within the frameworks of the Northern Forum, like for example the zoo Ortodaidu. They actually worked in the beginning in the framework of the Northern Forum, and we actually gave all the context of the zoos around the Arctic regions, and also we're very proud of a project that is called Circumpolar Flights, and it was done in the second part of the 90s, and it was actually we implemented it due to the context of the Northern Forum, and that was it was for the foreign flyers to come, and it was so it was when Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin opened the air route for other countries, and that was actually the Northern Forum was the one to demonstrate the flight to the Arctic regions and right over the polar circle, and that was the kind of a proof that we can actually fly over the countries. And at the end of the 90s, all the countries of the Arctic regions were part of this project, and they actually flew over our region at that time. And also, I would like to say that we have here Mr. Kugaevsky, who actually was in one of the planes which flew over the circumpolar regions, and we actually proved that it is actually doable. And also other and we actually made this possible for the Canadians and the Americans to fly over the circumpolar regions, and that was one of the pilot projects then. And also we spoke about the idea of flying big liners and to have infrastructure for them to be able to land here. But unfortunately, this project hasn't been implemented, but I know that the Canadians fly to they used to fly, but unfortunately they don't fly this year. They don't fly this year, starting from this year, but right now they don't fly starting from February. But it was one of the biggest opportunities, and you know, when we have ideas that were developed within the regions, actually can be quite big. It's one of the biggest projects was the International Arctic School.
Кроме как попечительского совета, сейчас не рекламирует, что это в свое время был.
You know, the Arctic School unfortunately doesn't mention the fact that the Northern Forum was the one to implement and to actually initiate this idea to have this International Arctic School. So Yakutia actually invested in this into the Arctic school. Like, for example, Khanty-Mansiysk has its own project, and it is called Save and Protect. And actually, this project also was started in the frameworks of the Northern Forum. And it was invested and it was supported by the governor of the Khanty-Mansiysk region, and it is a very big project that actually is one of the reputational projects of the region. And you know that they are one of the leaders in oil and gas extraction projects, and you know that this kind of extractions can't be done without harming the environment, and the fact that they have this kind of project is really, really good. And like I can actually go on and on with a list of projects, and we do actually dream about writing a book about this developments that were made via Northern Forum. And we are the international non-governmental organization, and you know, when we actually are approached by TV and stuff like that, we usually open, and they actually come and say that, oh, okay, we have this idea, and we are always open to ideas. And once we had a man who was like in his 70s, who came to us and they said, oh, I want to be a volunteer. We were able to give him contacts, and like even such cases can be approached, and we can actually help with this kind of ideas. So I don't know whether he went volunteering or not. I'm not sure. You know, investments are not. And it's not only money. And also we need to speak about the human resources. So when we invest into the human resources, like for example, you guys getting your education in this university, the fact that you are getting this education here is a form of investment as well. You know, when I was defending my thesis, I was 26, and I came to my opponent, and I came to sign a paper, and I said that this is the last paper to be signed. And he said that it's not the last one, and you will actually go with this on this path, and you know, and of course, at that time I was very young, and I was very ambitious, and I thought that I won't have any problems. But you know, you are new generation, and you are new people with your ideas, and you are very ambitious too. And I want to tell you that you will study every day of your life in the future. And when we speak about the investments into the human resources in the Arctic, you know, it's you know, if we speak about Canada, we can say that in Canada, in the northern parts of Canada, they don't have big populations there, and they flight in and flight out method. They work in this kind of method, and
И я сейчас позвоню, да, нашему исландцу, который
I'm going to call a person holder, and I'm going to I'm giving the floor to Andrei Konstantinovich.
Я даже вам разрешаю, если что, выйти из президиума, чтобы не смущать народ. Есть ли еще желающие?
Are there any volunteers to ask any questions? Good day.
Так, я сегодня представляю Центр
Today I
стратегических
present Center
исследований
of Strategic Researchers of Yakutsk.
исследований. Но наша специфика деятельности,
The specific of our activities is definitely connected with the strategic planning in Republic Sakha-Yakutia, its regions, and as a whole. Our center creates ratings of the municipal findings of the climate, and I'd like to learn your opinion about the components of the planning. And in current strategic planning, there is a tendency of a certain point of view to of investments.
что 70% к 2020 году, да, то есть и когда читаешь стратегические документы, исключительно
When you read strategic documents, there is a very big amount of such documents, but their quality suffers.
хотелось бы узнать ваше мнение насчет
I'd like to learn your opinion about the side of quality. Quality investments
социальный эффект, да?
is quite a
Какую
topic.
структуру экономики мы
They
хотим?
include
Приблизительно,
technologies, infrastructure.
может быть, вы могли бы обозначить вашу позицию, да? То есть
Maybe you
какие
could
инвестиции должны быть важны.
show
Если мы
your
предъявим нашим
position on
инвесторам,
what
которые
kind of
хотят
investment
заходить
should
в
be
программы
made in the
предъявляем,
Arctics.
да, требования по качеству,
At the
то
moment,
как
we
их
do
не
not
испугать этим? Если мы
make
говорим, что
any
это должны быть только наилучшие доступные технологии, если они должны быть экологичными, то
any
есть,
limitations in terms
как
of
найти вот этот
quality.
баланс между
How to find a certain
желанием
balance
республики
between
получить
the
и
desire of
большое
the Republic to
количество и
receive
хорошего качества,
a
да,
huge
но
amount
опять-таки же,
and
чтобы инвесторы к
pristine
нам приходили
quality,
со всем, несмотря на наши
uh,
желания.
and so
И как это
make the
осуществить в вашем
investors to
планировании? Спасибо.
invest in our republic as much as
Спасибо
possible.
огромное.
Thank you very
Очень
much.
точные
Indeed,
и хорошие вопросы,
it is
которые
quite
предполагают ответы
important
на хорошие
question.
вопросы. Еще, пожалуйста, желающие.
Are there any volunteers
Если
still?
пока нет, я, может быть,
If not,
воспользуюсь, злоупотреблю своим правом как
then I'll
модератора
use
и
my
от себя, если
then I'll
угодно,
use my
отвечу
right
на
as a
некоторые здесь
moderator
задаваемые
and
вопросы.
answer
Но сначала я
the
скажу еще пару
questions.
замечаний о том, как, в принципе, сейчас в
Firstly,
мире
I'll make some notes
стоит
about
вопрос
the
с инвестициями в Арктику.
situation in the world surrounding investments
Я
in the
международник, от
Arctic.
этого никуда не деться, я, собственно, не хочу никуда деваться. И в данном
As
случае,
a worker
когда говоришь
in
про любую
international
страну, особенно
relationships,
такую большую, как
when
Россия,
you talk
особенно в
about
такой
such a
переломном
giant
периоде,
country
надо
as
понимать,
Russia in such
как
drastic
наши беды, наши
period of
проблемы
time,
вписываются в общемировой
how our
контекст.
problems
Здесь я скажу,
are
на самом деле происходят
compared
большие изменения не
to
только
the
в России.
world in such context.
Они были вполне назревшими, потому что, ну, грубо говоря,
Those
до начала
problems
90-х
existed
годов,
for quite a while,
до начала
till
глобализации,
90s, till the
Арктика,
beginning
она
of
как
the
таковая не воспринималась как какое-то
globalization.
единое
The
целое,
Arctic
в
was
силу
not
ряда причин.
considered as a whole.
Политически, понятно, это была холодная война,
Of
это
course,
было
it was
районом
a political
представительства
matter.
соприкосновения
Cold War
Советского
was
Союза и стран
very
НАТО,
hesitant
со
to
всеми вытекающими отсюда не очень
confirm
хорошими
this
последствиями
zone
для
as a whole.
международного сотрудничества и для развития самой Арктики, потому что это
And
была
it, of
большая
course,
милитаризованная область, это был режим секретности и так далее.
the
А чисто
hesitation made it
экономически, ну, Арктика
impossible
никогда не
to
была
develop the Arctic as a whole.
государственных образований не было в силу, опять же, экстремальных условий жизни.
Plus,
Поэтому,
the Arctic did not
извините, так
support
сказать, за
any
политическую некорректность, белые люди, когда туда
state
приходили, для них это была, в общем, так сказать,
organizations.
слабо
When
освоенная и
people
не
came there,
политически
it
не
was
сопротивляющаяся территория.
quite
Белые люди, понятно, приходили туда за
weak state organization,
дефицитными
and
дорогостоящими ресурсами,
it
а-ля
was
пушнина,
used only for
драгоценные порой материалы,
very
впоследствии лес, золото, алмазы,
rich
нефть, газ,
resources, fur,
редкоземельные металлы,
oil, gas,
военно-стратегическое
diamonds.
положение.
Of
Пожалуйста,
course,
военные базы и
military
так далее.
strategic position is
Приходили с
also
определенными
also
целями, и, в
matters.
общем-то, сказать,
They came with a certain
с
goals and did
определенным
not
углом
plan
зрения,
to
что есть ресурс,
develop
который
the
надо
territory
максимально
itself.
эффективно использовать, вывести, и на этом, собственно, все экономическое
Only the
развитие
resources mattered
По
and
большому счету,
nothing
мировая
else.
Арктика мировой не была, это была совокупность таких эксплуатируемых
It
северных
was the collective
Что
base of
получилось в
such
условиях
resources which
глобализации?
should
С
and
одной
must
стороны,
be
национальные государства во многом
exported
утратили интерес
back
к
home.
северу, потому что с точки зрения монетаризма,
In terms of monetarism,
который господствовал, начиная с 90-х годов,
which was the reigning instrument in the 90s.
Если что-то производить дешевле в Гонконге, тогда зачем делать это за три конца на севере?
Why should we do this somewhere else if in Hong Kong it is already cheap enough?
С другой стороны, центральное
But
правительство
if we look at it from the other side, the state said to the inhabitants of the Arctic that they're free to cooperate with everyone whom they seem fit. And of course, the inhabitants of the Arctic show their eagerness to present themselves as a very profitable partner, very intense contacts with in terms of regional relationships, interstate relationships, and a very interesting web of relationships has appeared. And on top of that pyramid, the Arctic Committee has appeared, and somewhere near there is a Northern Forum.
Будет развитие уже совершенно на новых принципах. И одновременно с
It was decided that the development would reach the new level of abilities.
достаточно массово инвесторы из внерегиональных, неарктических
And of course, we should not forget the fact that the investments from other countries of the world have appeared, the countries of the West, Japan, and China. Such image was quite interesting for everyone who was invested in this topic.
Более осторожно бизнесмена.
The image that was drawn quite eagerly by politicians and hesitantly by investors.
Часто не совпадающих между собой интересов.
Sometimes interests that might completely contradict each other appear.
На это наложились большие глобальные тенденции последнего.
Big international tendencies have also made their
глобального управления, созданных в 90-е годы. Пошла цифровизация, пока что не
globalization,
пошел обострение климатических проблем.
Globalization, digitalization have made their prints on the Arctic. All of these large processes have promised both new possibilities and new dangers.
Серьезная дискуссия.
And thus a new discussion is going on about the future of the Arctic, which has formed into quite harsh ideological rivalry, which supports two sides.
Первый момент. Место человека в Арктике.
Firstly, a place of a human person in the Arctic. The position which Russia, Finland, and Democratic Party of USA support, the position that it is important to develop the climate of the Arctic and preserve it.
И ряд крупных компаний говорят, что можно в Арктике работать, но при этом еще быть экологически ответственным.
And a certain amount of companies support the opinion that it is possible to get the profits out of Arctic and while preserving the climate. While Sweden and the Democratic Party of USA Greta
которая не как
Thunberg
человек, а как социальный
as
феномен,
not
совсем не
as
случайно появилась
as not a
в нашей
person but a
стране.
social phenomenon
Крупные
had appeared
американские
in
банки и так далее,
Sweden.
они фактически экстремистскую такую
They
позицию занимают,
have
что единственное, что
they have
может
a
человек
standing,
сделать для
quite
устойчивого развития
extremistic
Арктики,
one,
это из Арктики уйти фактически.
um, and it
Ограничить
claims that we
присутствие
must
там
leave
долгие
the
месяцы.
Arctic and
И понятно, что от того, какой выбор
shorten
здесь будет
the
сделан, зависит
human
развитие глобальной
activity
Арктики
up
в
to
десятилетия вперед.
zero.
Второй большой выбор.
The second
Отсюда, соответственно,
choice
когда поощрять инвестиции или ограничивать их,
is
или
to
максимально,
either
так
support
сказать,
the
сворачивать
investments
с маршрута.
or completely
Второй большой принципиальный
reduce them.
выбор. Арктика для своих или для всех?
And then there is a dilemma: is the Arctic made only made only for its inhabitants or for the all participants of such committee?
Это те страны, у которых есть выход к, собственно, к Ледовитому океану.
Finland, USA, and Canada have their way towards northern sea, northern ocean, and thus such countries have a big responsibility to develop this issue. But such countries such as Western Europeans, Germany, France, Scotland, they have their own unique policy about this matter. India, Japan, even some Chileans have showed their initiative in this.
Сингапур, пожалуйста.
Singapore.
Вот все эти государства,
All of
они
these
говорят,
states
хорошо, есть арктические страны,
have
у вас особые
exclaimed their position that
говорите,
yes,
что
you
Арктика
have
это только ваша
such
часть.
Arctic zones in your countries, but it also affects us. For example, in Singapore, climate changes in the Arctic also affect our own matters. Depending on how the Arctic shipments go on, the Singaporean inner politics also change.
Развитие в Арктике, в том числе инвестиционное, прежде всего сами арктические государства, или же это дело глобального
Must the investments be managed only by the participants of the Arctic Circle or also by those states which are firmly believing that the Arctic is also their very important matter? Should the Arctic be called as the arena for confrontation of the civilized world and China and Russia, or the arena for cooperation? Unfortunately, the opinion of ultimate confrontation is taking its lead. Current relationships are being postponed and put on a pause. Russia has claimed that it is still going to participate in the matters of this organization, and whoever doesn't like this might simply withdraw its membership. The participants from India, Iceland might appear in this forum. And of course, in such environment, USA have led this confrontation between the West and Russia and India.
Россия, естественно, будет опираться тогда больше на, в том числе на Китай и на Индию. То есть,
while USA will lead NATO in this confrontation, Russia must rely on China and India. They will try to make such initiatives that will withhold any investment in the Arctic. Of course, this will directly affect Russia, because if we will not try to make a stand and not try to make those investments flow in this region, everything might crumble. The development of Seymour of Northern Sea Transport Corridor is also a very important matter of this initiative. There is ongoing conversation about who might be able to transport more supplies in on this matter.
120 миллионов тонн
120 million tons per year is the overall amount of supplies which are being transported each year. In 2020, there was said that it was 130 millions. Minister of Transport and CEO of Rosatom, they have claimed that 190 million tons is already possible. But the fact that the state doesn't reject these plans makes it hopeful for us that the development is still ongoing. Ships are constructed and transport corridors are developed. Considering your question, how investors might affect this issue, yes, objectively, it is quite complicated to work in the Arctics, and especially for the Russian investors who does not have a certain experience. There is an issue, of course. Do we need to work on this? Yes, we need to. Of course, a large window of opportunities opens for you. Siemens and Alstom are quite prominent in this issue, but those companies are leaving this initiative. They have produced those products which were not produced in our countries. Once Siemens left, the train Lastочка won't leave its route because we're unable to produce certain products ourselves. But still, for you, there are still certain prospects in terms of strategic matter, because one of the most significant competitors have left the market, and there is an opening for you. Although it doesn't mean that you can fully fulfill its missing place. Of course, Chinese banks stand behind this initiative. Russian business is going to be invested, and of course, lots of people in the government do not want to have anything in this matter. And if we want our country to survive, we need to deal with the problems in the Arctic. The ministry will rely on this matter. And of course, if we talk about the question of Olga Sergeyevna, during USSR we have our own points.
But if we take the direction of the east or the north, if we include the European north and Siberia and the Far East, of course, we have this conceptual idea of development of these territories in a very complex manner. So during the Soviet times, we have already established this transportation route, and we have two highways, two ways that actually connect western part of Russia and eastern part of Russia. We have railways to Tyumen, Urengoy, and the navigation that we have on the rivers of the Siberia. And this is like through them we actually developed the Siberia, and this is a big problem now. Do you want me? But we had one more reason.
Я уже вклинилась и говорю, можно.
Вы моя начальница, поэтому...
Нет, я ни в коем случае не... Ну, отчасти, да, потому что Андрей Константинович...
Andrei Konstantinovich agreed to work in our department, so he usually says that I am his boss. But really, it is very interesting that you are telling us about, and I have written a chapter of my book. It is called. It is dedicated to the history of the development of Far East of Russia during the Soviet times, and but I should say that we don't really do new. We don't have. We just, we follow old plans that we had during Soviet times. So it's kind of a question. And the second thing, in 2022, I'm sorry, 1922. 1922, it was there was a decree that was issued by Vladimir Lenin about the development in the Arctic, and we see that the Soviet government actually going to invest in the Arctic at that time, but before they actually, what was the reason? No, it's just because of the national security, and they were afraid that there would be some interventions from these Western countries to the Arctic, and you can see that the results are quite interesting and nice. And before the Second World War, everything was done because of this war. And we can actually have this parallel now with the situation we are facing now, and we actually are facing and dealing and doing the business. We're doing work in the Arctic, just like then. Actually, the decree was issued in 1918, and in 1920 there was an Arctic Council that was organized. And the intervention actually came to end, and it was quite fast because the Tsarist Russia actually didn't deal anything with the Arctic there, and in the Murmansk region, there were so many Norwegian residents that were actually coming to Murmansk area, and they reported about the situation to the Tsar of Russia then, and they
Они все говорили, у нас есть база в Либаве, то бишь Лиепая. Зачем нам этот север, если у нас
they actually said that we do have this base in Liepaja, and we don't really need this Murmansk to be developed and stuff like that. And then again, we had this war there, and you know, this is life that teaches us to go to the northern territories and build and develop the territories there. And Soviet government supported with the words of Mr. Trotsky, and they were afraid of Germans to be relocated there, and they were afraid of French thing. And you know, but later, in a couple of years, they said that they didn't really see any opportunities to be present there, so they just left the territories. So when we speak about the connection between the southern part of Russia and the territories beyond the Urals, is very interesting, and we worked together with the academic city of the Novosibirsk, and after lunchtime we are going to have a session together with those guys, and you are all invited there. And and of course, we need to have a very active role of the government. And unfortunately, the government doesn't realize its role, and the work has to be done in different relations. And of course, we speak about good conditions for the investment, preferable conditions for the investments, and of course, we speak about the flights over and developing the air routes to the Arctic regions. And of course, we need to we need to work on the railway roads and stuff like that, and we need to concentrate things beyond the Urals, so that we have the flights beyond the Urals and stuff like that. So you know that you know that the touristic companies started working really well, and when the air route was closed to Sochi, now we have routes by railway and highway. So you know, everybody who had cars, they would just go on their vacation on their cars. So, you know, if we speak about the Far East, then unfortunately, well, not many people can do that. And of course, here we need to have this will of the government that would develop the Far East and the territories beyond the Urals. Unfortunately, I've never been to Tomsk, and they usually, my friends usually say, come to Tomsk, we have lots of students here. And Tomsk, you are the intellectual capital of the Siberia, you know, and now we are, and your intellectual capacity will be demanded quite soon. And you know, I think that life will teach us, and it teach us to develop a scientific way of approach. And of course, So if we speak about the investments and
Почему вот на ваш вопрос, Анастасия? Но я как чиновник федеральной
to answer your question, I can say as a government person.
И во-вторых, потому что для чиновников это гораздо проще.
For the government, like the approach is from the government is to look into the numbers, basically. So it's like they don't really measure the quality of this investment. They just see into the numbers. So any government person can actually look into the numbers of millions of rubles, and it will be he or she will be provided with all the papers. And then there will be another paper that will have much more figure, and of course that will be more preferable in the eyes of the government. But if we look into the project where you have tractors that like if you look into the tractors that are made in some territories there, but the capacity of the project is just only like a couple of millions of rubles, and of course it's not preferable at all. Of course, those who give the projects that in millions of rubles, of course, unfortunately, this kind of logic was lobbied by the Ministry of Economics, and unfortunately, I tried to fight back. But of course, it is so much easier to see these figures and decide that which project is better, or which project is not preferable or preferable. But how can we measure quality? So if you have if we take big company that Gazprom, like for example, of course it brings lots of money, and it invests into the territory quite a lot. Of course, you can just tick some points in your reports, and of course, any big company can invest quite a lot of money in, but big companies, they don't really have desire to invest in the development of their territory. It's just because, for these companies, it's for them easy to do extraction of the oil and gas or whatever resources they extract. And they usually work with their own connections and their own network, and they don't really go into the territory and look into the people there or human resources there. And one of the partners told me, Russia, they don't do this. And I told him, what do you know about Russia? Have you ever been to Russia? And they say, well, how can I go in there and look there? What should I go and look there for? And I actually faced this with French guys, and I was the one to rewrite the program so that they were obliged to do work in the territories where they work. And of course, it is easier to have a bigger guy to provide things instead of having handful of those who would do small work. you know, big companies, they work on big scales, but if we we actually made analysis, and actually bigger, I mean smaller companies are more effective, just because.
Она не будет искать в Африке производителя этой трубы, потому что
Like let's take an American company that goes to Africa and they want some pipes and they want. Of course, they are not going to look for a pipe production company in Africa. They will just go with their own network of pipe dealers, and you have this, you know, contract that is signed with your network, and this is how it works, and
завести оборудование из центральной
it's very difficult to. So it's, I mean, it is so much easier to actually work on flight in and flight out basis, and to actually ship things from other parts of countries and stuff. It is much easier. So now we need to actually break this kind of logic. And life and the environment actually makes us to think the other way and to break this kind of logic. And we are working on a different way. And I do agree with all the people who participated in this discussion. And of course, we need to have this government will and desire to work in this part of Russia and invest. And we do need, and Russia actually needs this, and we need to start now. And so it's very pathetic, probably sounds, but this is what we are working on, and I am very happy that I am taking part in this thing. And it's not. I don't like the idea of investing quite a lot of money and taking milliards of resources. It shouldn't work that way. Okay, so we have Halldor Johansson, and he is.
First of all, Guten Morgen, Halldor. Please take a seat. Let me just introduce you. Я вам дам слово, Екатерина, просто Халдору спасибо, что он все-таки, несмотря на свою колоссальную...
Okay. I'm very happy that Halldor was able to come here. And Halldor Johansson is from Iceland. He's a multitasking person, and they usually actually do everything for the government of Iceland, but Iceland is quite a small country, only 300 people there, and we every Icelandic person usually actually works in different capacities, and they play in jazz and jazz band, and they play football in national. And Halldor Johansson is one of the examples of that, and he's a businessman. He's also does landscaping, landscape design of the infrastructure of Iceland, and he's also a businessman in the international. He has this Arctic portal. It's one of the best informative resources on the Arctic. Also, he is a friend of Russia, and he usually comes to Russia quite often and works with not only Russia but also Chinese counterparts. And and they work together with the station that actually observes the aurora borealis, and he also the representative Iceland in Icelandic Europe scientific community.
So I don't need to introduce you very actively, but it was actually just to explain how brilliantly knowledgeable you are about the Arctic and about investing in the Arctic. And I have the distinct pleasure of giving you the floor now. Катя, мы вам дадим слово потом, ладно? У нас синхрона нету, да? Ну да, если позволите, я готов сам буду попереводить. Или как скажете.
Thank you, Andrei. Well, he's a good friend, and he's very knowledgeable about the Arctic.
Не, ты говори.
Yes, I can say I've had the pleasure, I've had the privilege to travel widely in the Arctic in the last decades. When I was about the age of most of you around the table, I went abroad to study. I was given the privilege to actually go to Canada to study at the university.
Just a sec. А здесь-то идет синхрон? Студенты будут? Вам нужен перевод здесь кому-нибудь присутствующему? Потому что у нас в интернет идет синхрон, а сюда и нет, я так понимаю. Русскоязычная аудитория, перевод нужен? Или всем понятно? Okay, great. Everybody speaks English here, so just go on.
So yeah, when I was the age of most of you sitting around the table, not all of you, but most of you, I got the privilege of going abroad to study, and one of the first things that my teacher said to me, it was in Toronto in Canada. He was an old hippie. You know what a hippie is? Hippie was in the 60s and 70s. They were like just concerned about today, not so much about tomorrow. But he said, you know, I have to teach you to open your mind, take your blinders away. And it was a phrase that I've never forgotten, because it's been so evident in everything. Wherever you go, it's all about how widely people are ready to perceive everything around them and others. So the most important thing today for all of us is to expand our blinders so that we can see a bit more, we can understand what other people think. And we can also provide the message that other people understand. So this is something that I've actually been doing most of my life, because by choice, I decided to live in the Arctic. I was in Canada. I could have gone further south. I could have done basically almost anything I wanted. But I decided to go back home and try to expand the horizon of the people around me back home. Because I'm sure all of you have had that feeling that you are thinking broadly, but then your mother or your father or your grandfather or grandmother, they don't follow you. And it's very important that we communicate, and we learn to communicate to the people around us and to our community.
Иногда до вас доходило чувство, что ваши отцы, матери, бабушки, дедушки вас не понимали, и именно поэтому важно общаться и находить общий язык.
Because anything that has to do with change has to come in a way from the inside, you know. So if we're talking about investments, etc., there are change. Investment is always a change to our current situation. And it has to be done in friendship and understanding of all of us. That's the most important thing, that we have this feeling, we have this base to work from.
Инвестиции являются прямым изменением нашей реальности, и именно поэтому нам необходимо настраиваться и испытывать те чувственные ощущения, которые нам кажутся правильными.
The key word in the Arctic nowadays is tourism. And we say, okay, we'll just increase tourism and that will be great for the economy. But you know, tourism is a huge intervention in the daily life of the people that actually live in the Arctic. Because tourism means bringing new people in, people that have not been there before, and sometimes, and most often, people actually living there feel as it is an intervention into their daily life.
Ключевым словом в данной беседе является туризм. Туризм является довольно-таки хорошей перспективой для экономики, но он также является помехой для всех жителей Арктики. Жители Арктики, видя всех туристов, которые приезжают к ним на родину, чувствуют определенные помехи.
So we have, for example, in my country, in my little hometown in the northern part of Iceland, we had 208 cruise ships visit this summer. 208. And so we had many days, we had 4,000 to 10,000 people walking around in our downtown. And they sort of, in a way, poke at you, and it's you feel like you're in a museum. And that's not always a good feeling, you know? Even though they pay, it's not a good feeling. So it's an intervention into your daily life, and it's a disturbance.
В Исландии у нас каждый год приезжает порядка 208 круизных лайнеров с тысячами туристов. И это довольно-таки неприятно, когда на вас тычут, как будто вы обезьяны в вольере. Как-никак турист – это есть прямое вмешательство в личную жизнь любого жителя вашей страны.
Another thing, of course, that comes with too much tourism is more traffic. It's also prices go up. Things are different. But on the other hand, we have more restaurants now than we had before, so there's a certain gain from it. But the most important thing is like all such things have to be in good collaboration with the local community.
Туризм также является признаком и повышения цен, но вместе с тем и приходит больше бизнесов. Так у нас появилось больше ресторанов в местности, от этого исходит определенная выгода. И, конечно, нужно знать, что все должно обсуждаться с местным сообществом.
We've also, of course, seen that there are consequences related to investments, and there are complications related to the investments. There's also a certain reluctance to allow investors that are not sort of the same, let's say, look and feel as ourselves. And I had the privilege to work with Chinese investors some years ago, but it was very, very difficult for my local community to accept them.
Естественно, с инвестициями приходят определенные последствия и сложности. У инвесторов возникает крайне тяжелая неуверенность по отношению к определенным инициативам. И у меня была привилегия работы с китайскими инвесторами, и я могу вас заверить, что мои соседи, дорогие исландцы, это заняло довольно-таки много времени на привыкание к работе с китайцами.
And also in that case, it was extremely interesting to see how the interest of others affected the people in my local community. It was the sort of the Western world that made it very difficult for them to accept the investment from another country because they didn't know that country. Later on, there have been investments from, for example, the U.S. into the main hotels in that town, but when it was a Chinese, it was something that people could not accept. And this is, of course, to me, very interesting, and this is very interesting, of course, and very important to us that when we talk about the Arctic and we talk about our own home, because it is our home, like, what can we accept and how can we then move forward? And within what frame can we move forward? And you have to think about that. Would you be happy with, for example, Chinese investing here in Yakutia? Or would it be better if it's Russian, or if it's maybe Icelandic or US? Does it make a difference? And in my experience, yes, there is a difference. And so culture and how we perceive the other people is definitely a key. So we have to be very careful when we approach new projects as to how we introduce them.
Также интересно увидеть на то, как данные инвестиции повлияли на мое сообщество. Это крайне важно принимать те инвестиции, которые исходят из других стран, но иногда возникают сложности, когда местное сообщество из-за незнания об определенной стране отказывается и не принимает подобные инвестиции. На примере США и довольно-таки известных сетей отелей все было довольно-таки прекрасно, а когда дело дошло до Китая, было серьезное непринятие. Крайне важно, когда мы говорим об инвестициях, касающихся Арктики и нашей Родины, необходимо знать, что когда и что можно принять в определенный период времени, какие инвестиции из каких стран можно принимать подобные выплаты, например, лучше ли принимать инвестиции из Китая, Якутии, России, Запада и так далее. Очень важно и то, как мы относимся к самим людям.
I can also tell you many stories that I've lived myself when it comes to the sort of perceival of things. But for example, when somebody walks into the room, it is important how and who and why they are there. I was in Greenland a few years ago and at a public hearing in Nuuk, in the main city of Greenland, about a big iron ore mine proposed just outside of the community.
Хотелось бы вам рассказать историю о моем опыте.
And it was absolutely incredible that the manager of the company, which was called London Mining, he was actually a Chinese Canadian. But because he looked Chinese, people were against it. Like when he walked into the room, it was an incredible feeling. Just when he walked into the room, the atmosphere turned into negative, like that. And they started talking about, well, if you make this mine, we can't walk through there. We can't do this and that. All like trivial things. But the main thing about this big investment and everything was not discussed. It was really incredible to see and feel that sort of, because well, somebody said to me yesterday, it's a joke, of course, but you know, if you we're not prejudiced, but we hate black, you know. Okay, it's a bad joke, but still, you know, it's the thing, you know. We all have this thing in us in a way, and we then, when it's dealing with investments, we have to learn how to play it. And I have a lot of indigenous friends around the Arctic, and it's incredible. Sorry that I speak very openly now, but it is so important that we understand sorry, the game anyway, and we understand how people feel, because it's all about the feelings and about how we perceive things and how we actually react to it. And I told you the story about Chinese in Iceland, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible, because the land that the Chinese wanted to buy, he wanted to buy some land in Iceland, and it was impossible. And it was all over the world media about how this guy had invested here and there. He made his money from real estate. He made his money because he was a friend of the Communist Party or whatever. And then the same land was sold to a UK tycoon. You know how he made his money? He has a chemical plant.
Excuse me, can I interpret what you said so far?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Did you understand? Everybody?
Я хотел рассказать вам историю в Гренландии, когда происходила встреча между местным сообществом и китайскими инвесторами, и оказывается, менеджер компании, который приехал на эту встречу, оказался канадцем китайского происхождения. Он прекрасно выражался на английском, но когда выяснилось, что человек происходит из азиатского происхождения, атмосфера в комнате ухудшилась, и речь об инвестициях даже и не шла. Речь о стереотипах и предубеждениях. Как нам это избегать во время подобных разговоров? И также важно то, как мы относимся к определенным вещам. И касаясь этой темы, данный человек хотел приобрести землю в Гренландии, и в новостях обсуждалось то, как он зарабатывал определенные доходы, было ли это из китайской партии, как сильно он к ней был привязан и так далее.
Я добавлю на всякий случай, да, этот человек его звали Хуан Нюбо. Против него действительно была поднята кампания. В результате исландцы так и не продали ему землю. Впоследствии ему не продали землю еще
So they didn't really. As a result, unfortunately, he wasn't able to buy any property, land property from any of the countries, and as a result, it was sold to English person, and he was just white person. And there is a racist joke, they usually say, I am not racist, but I don't like black people.
To make a long story short, since he was English, it was okay for him to buy the land, and it was okay for him to now own it. And he's regarded as a certain hero, even though, as I was saying, the way he made his money was obviously no better than the way my Chinese friend made his money. But it's how we perceive everything is so important. So to make a long story short, when we're talking about investments, I was of course at the I've been working as a consultant to the Foreign Service of the EU over the years, and they announced or published a new Arctic strategy last year. And then they say, well, oil and gas minerals should stay in the ground. So we should not do that. And then, of course, they're asked, well, how are you then going to turn the CO2 emissions down, because you need minerals when you need to have solar panels, you need electric cars, etc. And I said, yeah, okay, well, we're going to get those from northern Scandinavia. And then the Samis stood up and said, sorry, that's where we have our reindeers. Yeah, okay. Maybe then we need to have a discussion. and that's the essence of everything. We need to discuss. We need to look at things from all sides, because there's no one clear path. But the most important thing is, whatever we do, we have to work from bottom up and top down. And when it comes to tourism, no tourism company is successful unless the people that live in the area where you have your tourism company are happy with the company. I told you in the beginning, I mean, how they're infiltrating my community, and if people are not happy, then it's not successful. At the same time, investments in the Arctic are usually not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes a lot of time to get the investment back. So we have to think long term. And then, of course, you also need to have the community with you. But most importantly, of course, you need to have your government and the funding agencies behind you, because these investments, they take longer, but they are very important to us. This is evident in mining, this is evident in fishing companies, in tourism, etc. So long-term thinking is a key. That's why, for example, I had a long talk yesterday with my friend from Kamchatka, Dmitry, about the Arctic shipping. Arctic shipping, for example, it looks extremely nice on paper. It's very, very interesting. But again, it's a long-term thing. Sorry.
Можно не переводить, тут аудитория понимает английский. Спасибо.
Но для трансляции также необходим перевод.
Давайте.
Поскольку тот являлся англичанином, все было довольно-таки в порядке в плане восприятия моего сообщества. Его воспринимали как героя, но зарабатывал он деньги не лучше моего китайского друга. Именно поэтому восприятие определенных вопросов также имеет большое значение, когда речь заходит об инвестициях. Я являюсь консультантом ЕС об арктическом вопросе, часто выступал с определенными идеями об арктических стратегиях, и зачастую мне выражали отказ в определенных инициативах, поскольку их видение заключалось в и энергосберегающих технологиях, таких как солнечные панели, электромашины. И я предлагал завозить их из Северной Скандинавии. В свою очередь, те выразились такой фразой: а у нас есть только олени. И именно поэтому необходимо вести долгие и внятные дискуссии, и все изменения должны происходить снизу до самого верха. Именно поэтому инвестиции должны вызывать у общества положительные эмоции, иначе никаких инвестиций не произойдут. Также они должны быть направлены на долгосрочную перспективу, и должна прослеживаться поддержка народная, государственная и инвестиционная. Это касается различных сред, такие как добыча полезных ископаемых, рыболовство, туризм и так далее.
So what I was saying about the Arctic shipping, Arctic shipping is very, it looks extremely nice on paper, and you could almost say it's a very sort of sexy project in a way. But when it comes to the business part of it, the business part is, let's say, shaky a bit. And that's where the problem lies. It's like we don't have a business plan. We don't see, and the business companies don't see the advantage. We think it's a very good idea, but when you look at it from the perspective of CEO in a shipping company, the risk isn't worth it. So those are the things that we are dealing with in the Arctic. It's the both the long-term thing. It's also the how the local community perceives it, and then of course it's the risk part in the climate thing, because we are living climate change, and we don't know honestly. Is the Arctic going to be open in 10 years or 20 years or 200 years? These are the factors that we don't know. And of course, in a business perspective, those are not good scenarios. So that's the problem. Is the permafrost going to thaw in Yakutia? Will it be impossible to basically walk on the roads in 10 years from now in the summertime? I mean, these are big issues, and we don't know.
Также, касаясь арктического товарооборота, нам стоит объяснить то, что хоть это дело является довольно-таки прибыльным и привлекательным, данное дело не обходится без своих тонкостей. Это у нас включает отсутствие какого-либо бизнес-плана. Если посмотреть со стороны исполнительного директора определенной компании, то, по его мнению, это дело свеч не стоит. Также необходимо знать, как определенные инвестиции будут восприниматься обществом, а также какие риски они могут повлечь на атмосферу и климат местности. Как мы знаем, эти факторы довольно-таки неизвестны. Мы не знаем, сможем ли мы ездить по тем дорогам, которые мы построили в течение 5, 10, 20 лет в будущее. Это является большой проблемой, поскольку эта неопределенность может вызывать большие сомнения у наших инвесторов.
So I'll just end by saying we live in an area and a region of incredible opportunities, but we also have threats in front of us that we have to realize and we have to learn to know. So the most important thing is to increase our knowledge. We have to continue to do research, we have to do monitoring, we have to exchange information among ourselves and with the outside community. But first and foremost, we have to continue to learn and learn and learn. Because by that, based on knowledge, we can do great things. If we don't base it on knowledge, then we have issues ahead of us. Thank you.
Также нужно сказать, что Арктика является местом незабываемых возможностей, но также присутствуют и определенные риски. Именно поэтому знание является ключевым фактором в проблеме инвестиций. Нам необходимо проводить исследования, ставить известность об определенных фактах общества. Без определенной базы знаний какой-либо разговор об инвестициях заводить не стоит.
Спасибо большое, Halder. Thank you very much indeed, Halder. I can't but share 100% of what you just said, and that was a brilliant sum-up speech, which actually is very much in line with our discussion. Lost that, fortunately, but we were very often talking about very similar things globally and locally here in Russia. Я поблагодарил нашего докладчика, и думаю, собственно, его выступление можно было содержательную часть дискуссии закончить. Но вот Катерина просила для...
So, Katerina also asked for word. My name is Ekaterina Timofeeva, and I am in the group of scientists that we work in one of the projects together with a scientist, and he said that about the investments should take into account knowledge of the local people. And when we speak about the investments, we speak about the specialized equipment, and when we speak about the equipment, so the equipment has to be adapted into the conditions of the Arctic and the North. And up to 30–40% of all the equipment that are exploited in the usually stops working are not adapted for the climate here, and unfortunately we have the rubber materials of this equipment that actually can't stand this kind of cold weather. And what about the Andrei Konstantinovich actually mentioned about the types in Africa, and you know that the pipes should be placed in the conditions where you have the temperature difference is quite high, and we work on this very narrow project, and I think that our guests would be interested in our research.
Спасибо большое.
Thank
Хорошее
you.
очень замечание.
It was a very good thing, and I should say, as a person who works for Gazprom, and we actually work with pipes quite a lot, and it was very good. So, and it is really nice to have this voice of a young scientist who actually work on the development of things that are very needed in the Arctic regions, and we should say that Tomskaya Oblast should actually take part in our discussion and in the territories here, just with your intellectual capacities that you have. And unfortunately, we just have to buy this. We have to buy equipment from other countries, but we need to. But we have to think of our country as a great country, and we used to have lots of things. And why we can't do what we used to do? And we do have all the things. And we do have some reasons, of course. Unwillingness of politics and oligarchs and probably scientists not to really work on this. And they have to work. We have to work. And we are actually ready to work, and we really want to work. I am a scientist myself, and I'm not saying that all scientists are not willing to work. So, we did a great discussion, and we worked quite lengthy time. And thank you for all of us for working and discussing.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Sorry.